Welcome to Dawn of the New Earth. My name is Morgue. I'm an ex-Christian revealing hidden knowledge to create a new earth, and today we are exploring secret satanic symbolism used in satanic rituals as we continue to explore Satanism. And today we're going to be exploring, like I said, satanic rituals and the symbolism used in them. For example, one of the symbols that we will be exploring today is the symbol of Baphomet and what it means, but there's a lot that we're going to be taking a look and seeing how it relates to satanic rituals and the aspect of Satanism known as greater magic. It's going to be really good, very interesting, and we're going to get started right away. But as usual, please like and subscribe. And if you enjoy my work and want to help me reach more people within this information and help my channel grow, then become a member on Patreon or on YouTube. And if you hit the join button right below this video, you can see all the different tiers you can join and the perks that you get. Like you can get access to all of our members only videos. There's a new one every week. You can get access to our Discord server where we have live study groups. A lot of great stuff. Check it out, and it helps out the channel a lot. On that note, I also want to remind you that my latest book, this is my fourth book, Teleocracy, Creating the New Earth, and this releases in just a few days, October 10th, Thursday. But it is also available for pre-order right now if you'd like. So, with all of the chaos and separation and division and destruction going on in the world, we need a plan for a new future that is designed according to our interconnected reality. So a teleocracy comes from the word telos, which means purpose, a purposeful society, because we're really lacking purpose in this day and age. So like I said, that's book 4. If you don't know where to begin, start with my first book. That's Neogenesis, Dawn of the New Mind. That's book number 1. That's available right now. Links to all my books are in the description of this video. And you'll also find in the description of this video a link to my Spotify channel. Go follow me there. Or just look up on Spotify, Dawn of the New Earth. You can find me there. And it's a great way to listen to this information. And there's even video on Spotify now. But anyway, let's get started, my friends. We've been talking a lot about Satanism. And we've explored satanic magic a bit. But now we're going to explore the symbolism used in satanic rituals and what they mean. And I think this is a question that a lot of people wonder. They've seen these symbols before, like the symbol of Baphomet, for example, but they don't really know what these symbols mean or what they represent. And we're going to be unpacking all of that today. It's going to be very interesting. So let's get started. I'm going to be reading a few excerpts from the Satanic Bible written by Anton LaVey. And so if you enjoy some of the excerpts that I will be reading from today, you can go get yourself a copy of this. But let's begin, and I'm going to be giving you my view on this because I have a mixed view on Satanism in general. And no offense to Satanists out there. Like I say, I've known a lot of great Satanists, but I'm not a huge fan of satanic magic, and I'll be explaining why as we go. And it's some important things, but let's start here. So this is describing, Anton LaVey is describing a satanic ritual and the symbolism and devices used in a satanic ritual. And the first thing that Anton LaVey says is black robes. Black robes are worn by the male participants. So male participants wear black robes. Now, a lot of people ask me why I wear black, by the way. And this is not the satanic answer, but I just want to, throw this out there because a lot of people ask me, why do you wear all black? I wear all black for 2 reasons. One being is that black absorbs all visible light. So black is really a container of light. Just like a black hole contains light. So it's really a representation of a container of light. Black also represents being antithetical or opposed to the current world order, the current way, the current paradigm, the current way things are currently done. That's why I wear black. But that's really neither here nor there. I just want to throw that out because I get that question a lot. The first thing, black robes are used by the male participants. However, female participants wear garments which are sexually suggestive, or all black clothing for older women, amulets bearing the sigil of Baphomet, or the traditional pentagram of Satan are worn by all participants. So black robes for men, sexually suggestive clothes for women unless they're old than black clothes. And everyone needs to wear the sigil of Baphomet or the traditional pentagram of Satan. Baphomet is, of course, the symbol here that we're going to be talking about, and we'll also be talking about the satanic pentagram. But a couple things, like you can probably already see right away, one of the reasons why I'm not a huge fan of satanic magic is this real sharp division between men and women. And women are often used simply in terms of their sexuality, which I'm just not a huge fan of. I don't mind there being, if you want to have sexually suggestive elements in a ritual, again, as long as it's consensual and, everyone's of consenting age and it's safe, all the stuff that should go without saying. As long as it's all that, sure, it's fine. But really dividing it up between, this is, the men are going to wear this and the women are going to wear this unless they're old. Then I'm not a huge fan of that. I think it should be more freedom for one to choose, not really divided so harshly like this. But LaVey continues by saying, black is chosen because it's symbolic of the powers of darkness. And you see, really, I wear black for the opposite reason, is symbolizing light, as well as being antithetical to the established order. Here in Satanism, black is chosen to represent the powers of darkness. Sexually appealing clothing is worn by women for the purpose of stimulating the emotions of the male participants and thereby intensifying the outpouring of adrenal or bioelectrical energy, which will ensure a more powerful working. So yeah, not a huge fan of how this is being presented. I do see the power in imbuing certain rituals with sexual energy, of course, again, as long as everyone's consenting and whatnot. But having this very harsh division in terms of like the male roles and the female roles, I don't like that, personally. Anyway, let's continue. And you'll see this theme is continuing, because now we talk about the altar, right? So the altar involved in the satanic ritual, LaVey says, man's earliest altars were living flesh and blood. So LaVey continues by saying Satanism is a religion of the flesh rather than of the spirit. Therefore, an altar of flesh is used in satanic ceremonies. So again, another reason I'm not a huge fan of satanic magic. Satanism is very much of the flesh, not of the spirit. And I believe that we need a healthy duality. We need to realize that, yes, we are flesh and blood, but ultimately that we are spiritual beings, we are eternal beings, and we are here to grow, learn, evolve, and actualize, not just indulge in the flesh all the time. Nothing wrong with indulging in the flesh, but focusing everything on that, I think, really misses the point of why we are here. And but anyway, so LaVey says this is why they use an altar of flesh and blood in satanic ceremonies, because it's a religion of the flesh, not of the spirit. What does that mean? Well, LaVey says a nude woman is used as the altar in satanic rituals because woman is the natural passive receptor and represents the Earth Mother. So see, like, again, not a huge fan of this. I'm not a fan of using women as objects, as tables, as altars. I've noticed that happens a lot in different ritualistic settings that are very patriarchal. They look at women as like instruments, and I don't like it. Now, it's completely different if, let's say, a woman wants to be involved in a ritual and wants to, and willingly and wants to take that role for a particular ritual. That's fine. But such a generalized blanket statement, like a naked woman should be the altar because women are the passive receptor. I find this very limiting, very constricting. And, ultimately it feels very sexist to me. Once, as I said, it's very different if someone who happens to be a woman wants to take that role, but someone can take that role and not be a woman either. They can be male and take that role. They can be non-binary and take that role. They can be whatever they like and take that role. Because the reason being is because we all have these energies within ourselves. And we have to be and that's where Satanism, it gets so wrapped up in like the body, the flesh, the blood, because it's a system of the flesh. It's not a system of spirit. And spiritually speaking, as eternal minds, eternal souls, we are all male and female in terms of our systems of energy. Now, we can express that in different ways, but ultimately, when it comes to that, we have all these energies within ourselves. Carl Jung understood this when he came up with the concept or discovered the concept of the anima and the animus, which in the Neogenian system we call the mirror self, which reflects our inner opposites within ourselves. But yeah, so another reason, not a huge fan. I think it's very restrictive. Ultimately, it's kind of sexist in my opinion, and should be more open. Now, I do understand that this was written in 1969, I want to say. So, you have to keep that in mind as well. But I'm thinking about this in terms of our modern society that we live in today. Not that it's okay to be that back then, but we can understand that there were different cultures and there was a different cultural attitude, but still, I personally not a huge fan. So now we'll get to the symbol of Baphomet, which is, of course, let me bring it up on screen. This is the symbol of Baphomet. So LeVay says the symbol of Baphomet was used by the Knights Templar to represent Satan. Through the ages, this symbol has been called by many different names. Baphomet represents the power of darkness combined with the generative fertility of the goat. So, a couple things that I want to mention here, and let me bring this. I know you guys can see it on screen, but let me bring it up so I can actually see it. So this is the symbol of Baphomet, and LeVay is saying it represents the power of darkness combined with the fertility of the goat. And another reason why I'm not a super huge fan of Satanism is because this is a very, in my opinion, limited interpretation and view of Baphomet. Baphomet is a symbol of unifying opposites together, which means unifying male and female, the above, the below, darkness and light, the animalistic and the spiritual. So you can see that the animalistic and the spiritual and the human are all intertwined together. You have a goat head representing like the animal nature. You have the human representing the human body representing humanity. And then you have the angel wings representing the spirit. You can see this body also has breasts representing the female aspect. And you can see within its, by its crotch area there, you have an intertwining serpent, black and white, representing duality. And one hand is pointed up, one hand is pointed down, meaning as above, so below, the ancient Hermetic axiom that means that the microcosm is, the macrocosm is reflected in the microcosm, as below, as above, so below, as within, so without, meaning that materiality reflects spirituality and vice versa, and that what is within us reflects what we externalize as well. And then you can't really see it because it's very small, but on one of his arms is written solve, and another one of his hands is written coagula. So solve and coagula are written on this symbol. Solve et coagula is another alchemical axiom, which means basically dissolve and coagulate, or dissolve and put back together. And this represents the perfection of the self, or the perfection of the soul, which means the dissolve part means to separate all the impurities of the soul, transform them, and then recombine them into a higher state. So alchemy is symbolic. Transforming base metal into gold is also symbolically reflected as transforming the soul from an impure state to a pure state, or reaching higher levels of consciousness. And so dissolve and coagulate. So alchemy is all about transforming. So it's about taking your imperfections and transforming them and recombining and integrating them. In Jungian psychology, this is the process of individuation to reach higher levels of consciousness and a more unified state of awareness. And you can also see the torch at the top of the head representing enlightenment. And then you have the pentagram in the center of the goat's head. And this is an upright pentagram. In the upright pentagram, 4 of the bottom points represents the 4 elements: fire, water, earth, and air. And the top point represents spirit. It's higher than all the rest, representing its primacy and its ordering function on all the rest. So you can see this is a very, very, very rich symbol. And, there's probably a lot more that we didn't even talk about here, but it's a very rich symbol. And it entails, ultimately, this symbol is all about unifying opposites: spirit and matter, male and female, combining impurities together to reach higher states of awareness, higher states of consciousness, the primal and the spiritual, all these different opposites together. And the pentagram, which is upright, representing the primacy of an ordering function of spirit. This is a lot deeper than how it's being used in Satanism, where LaVey is basically just like, oh, well, Baphomet represents the powers of darkness combined with the generative fertility of the goat. So you can see, another reason why I'm not a super huge fan of the Satanic interpretation. In my opinion, it's very limiting and very one-sided when this is literally a symbol about combining opposites together, not just being, in Satanism, it'd just be like, oh, it's about darkness, it's about the flesh, it's about power. Well, yeah, it's about darkness and about the flesh, but it's also about spirit. It's also about enlightenment. It's also about transformation of the soul. It's about all these things. So LaVey continues by saying, in its pure form, the pentagram is shown encompassing the figure of a man in the 5 points of the star. 3 points up, 2 pointing down, symbolizing man's spiritual nature. So here, of course, we have what LaVey is referring to. This is the pentagram. And you could imagine a man, if you imagine a man, a human being, with the arms outstretched, right? That would be the 2 points of the star, and the legs being the 2 points, right? So your legs are the 2 points, and the arms are the 2 points, and the head is the top point. The 4 bottom points, like I said earlier, represents the earth element, the material elements: fire, earth, air, and water. And the top represents spirit. And like LaVey says here, the spirit being at the top symbolizes man's spiritual nature. But LaVey continues by saying, in Satanism, the pentagram is also used. But since Satanism represents the carnal instincts of man, or the opposite of spiritual nature, the pentagram is inverted. So Satanists don't use this form of the pentagram in general. I mean, maybe some do, but I'm talking about really, specifically LaVey's interpretation here is the inverted version of the pentagram is used, where the top point points downwards. So here is that on screen. I'll try and make it a little bigger for you guys. So you can see this is the pentagram, but it is now inverted. And so now, instead of having spirit at the top, you have earth or matter or the material world or the flesh as being prime, taking the primal, the place of primacy. And so in Satanism, the pentagram is inverted, representing the carnal instincts of man, the opposite of the spiritual nature. And the pentagram is inverted to perfectly accommodate the head of the goat. So you can see, instead of being like the pentagram, you can envision a man or just a human being within this pentagram, the top being the head, the two lower points being the arms, and the two bottommost points being the legs. Well, here in Satanism, it's inverted to represent the flesh, and a beast or a ghost or a goat, an animal is used to represent carnal, instinctual desire, fleshly indulgences. Its horns, representing duality, is thrust upwards in defiance. The other 3 points inverted, or the Trinity denied. So LeVay says the top 2 points represent duality and what did he say? Defiance. And then the bottom 3 represent the denial of the Trinity. So once again, Satanism is very focused on material, animalistic, fleshly things, and it's very much in a lot of ways, a response to Christianity, a rejection of Christianity. So LeVay continues by saying, so if you notice there are symbols on the outside of this pentagram, or since it's in a circle, you could call it a pentacle. The Hebrew figures around the outer circle of the symbol, which stem from the magical teachings of the Kabbalah, spell out Leviathan. So this is another name that has been used for Satan. The symbols around it represent the name Leviathan, another name used for Satan. So as LeVay said, in satanic rituals, all members are to wear the symbol of Baphomet, or the symbol or the satanic pentagram. Now, what LeVay continues by saying, what else is involved in satanic rituals and symbolism are candles. And LeVay says the candles used in satanic ritual represent the light of Lucifer, the bearer of light, enlightenment, the living flame, burning desire, and the flames of the pit. Now, we have to remember that Lucifer in Satanism means something very different from Lucifer in other esoteric and occult systems. In Satanism, Lucifer is just another aspect of Satan, or another counterpart to Satan, which just basically represents knowledge. It's in LeVay's book is divided into 4 sections. The first book is the Book of Satan. The second book is the Book of Lucifer. And the Book of Lucifer lays out the philosophy of Satanism. So it's about knowledge. It's about understanding. Now, this is a far cry from how Lucifer is represented in things like Luciferianism, which is completely different. If you haven't seen my video, Satanism versus Luciferianism, check it out. But in those systems, Lucifer is the complete opposite of Satan and represents enlightenment in terms of hidden knowledge and reaching higher levels of consciousness, which Satanism is not concerned with. Satanism is not concerned with reaching higher levels of consciousness. Satanism is concerned with the flesh and indulgence, the earthly, the here and the now. Nothing wrong with that, but it's missing a big piece of the puzzle, a big part of the picture, in my opinion. LeVay says only black and white candles are to be used, and never use more than 1 white candle. So all black candles except for 1 white candle. And you can see Satanism is a very one-sided system, and you can see this in all their symbology. Use black and white, but only 1 white candle. At least 1 black candle is placed on the left of the altar, representing the powers of darkness and the left-hand path. 1 white candle is placed to the right of the altar, representing the hypocrisy of white light magicians and followers of the right-hand path. So even when that 1 white candle is used, it's used to mock. It's used to mock white light magicians, followers of the right-hand path. And as we'll see, the white candle is used for curses. So it's not a very good place. It's not like, oh, it represents balance. No, it's mocking one aspect. Now, real quick, I want to say something about left-hand path versus right-hand path, because essentially, you know, in this satanic ritual, you have black candles and white candles. At the altar, you have one black and one white. White represents the left-hand path. I'm sorry, black represents the left-hand path. White represents mocking the right-hand path. Now, what is right-hand path versus left-hand path? Like in a lot of magic, it depends who you ask. There's a lot of different definitions. There are two main different ways to define it that I have seen. For the most part, the average practitioner, in my opinion, or the average person who has some understanding of right-hand path or left-hand path, usually uses it to mean right-hand path to refer to like mainstream religion, like Christianity or any of the Abrahamic faiths, or just like what you would think of in terms of like mainstream source of religion. That's usually what they refer to as right-hand path, whereas left-hand path they would refer to as more like occult and pagan traditions. I don't like this definition, and this is not the definition that Aleister Crowley uses. For example, in his book Magic Without Tears, Aleister Crowley describes it much differently, and this I think makes much more sense, and it's the definition that I use. Right-hand path represents systems that are geared towards unifying with the divine, or unifying with God, or unifying with a higher power. That's right-hand path. Unifying with God, unifying with a higher power, unifying with the divine. Whereas left-hand path is about an individual becoming God themselves as an individual. Left-hand path, becoming an individual God. Right-hand path, about unifying with God or a higher power of some kind. If I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure that Aleister Crowley in that book describes his system as being right-hand path. It's been a while since I've read it, so don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure, which would probably surprise a lot of people, because I think 99% of people out there would think of Aleister Crowley as being left-hand path, but I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong, like I said, I'm pretty sure he categorizes his system as being right-hand path. Now, what do I think? I think that if we're going to be talking in these sorts of terms, what I would promote is the synthesis of the two, left-hand and right-hand path, in that we are all individual gods and can become individual gods, but we are all as well a network or collective. So in other words, we can become an individual god. Is there a higher power to unify with? Well, yes, but that higher power isn't something external from us. It is us together. So in other words, left-hand path would be about the individual attainment of divinity. Right-hand path would be the collective attainment of our universal unity and divinity as a network. So it's about both in the interpretation that I take. Absolutely, there is no higher power other than us together. So left hand, individual attaining godhood. Right hand, collectively attaining a synchronized state of divinity as the absolute. So these are the definitions that I work under in terms of right hand being unity with divinity, left hand being individual becoming self-deification, and my opinion is that they should be synthesized, not one nor the other. LaVey continues by saying that a bell is used, and this is pretty basic. A bell is the shattering effect of the bell is used to mark both the beginning and the end of the ritual. It's just like a punctuation mark to open it and to close it. That's very common. You can use a bell, you can use a gong, you can clap your hands, you can do whatever. A chalice in satanic ritual, the chalice or goblet represents the chalice of ecstasy, which is a lot different in, most magic systems. In most magic systems, the goblet or the chalice represents emotion and intuition. Here in Satanism, it represents ecstasy. And then an elixir of life, the stimulating fluid or elixir of life used by the pagans has been corrupted into sacramental wine by the Christian faith. Satanism does not sacrifice its god, as do other religions. The Satanist practices no such form of symbolic cannibalism and returns the sacramental wine used by the Christians in its original purpose, that of stimulating the emotions necessary to the satanic ritual. Wine itself need not be used. Whatever drink is most stimulating and pleasing to the palate is in order. So basically, and I do agree that the Christian sacrament of drinking the blood of Christ and eating the flesh of Christ is very odd. I agree with this. Essentially, Satanism says they don't want to have anything to do with that. They use wine as a stimulating effect, or any sort of liquid that has a stimulating effect can be used just to enhance the ritual. And then a sword. The sword of power is symbolic of an aggressive force and acts as an extension and intensifier of the arm with which the priest uses to gesture and point. A parallel to this is the pointing stick or blasting wand used in other forms of magic ritual. So again, sword being used as an aggressive force, similar to the blasting power of the wand. Again, you can see Satanism is very aggressive, very dark. Usually, in other magic systems, the sword is associated with air and is associated with the intellect. And so the sword is usually used in terms of banishing rituals or piercing through illusions. So the sword, usually, in other systems, is represented as intellect, rationality, which allows one to cut through illusions. But here it's a symbol of an aggressive force. So, very, yeah, I'm not a huge fan of satanic magic, like I said in the beginning. So, no offense if you're Satanist, like I said, but not my thing. I think it's very imbalanced, very one-sided. And ultimately, I think it suffers because of that. It's ultimately weaker. That's my problem, is that like Satanism is supposed to be all about like power and whatnot. But ultimately it becomes, in my opinion, it weakens it. It dilutes it. Because it's like trying to walk with only your left foot. You're not going to get anywhere. You're just going to walk in circles. You need to have both your feet working together. You need both the left hemisphere and the right hemispheric functions. You need all your different faculties working together. So not a super huge fan of it. Now, I will say that Satanism can be a good stepping stone for people who are leaving Christianity behind. It can be a nice transitory period. I think it can serve a purpose and help people. And yeah, so, that's that. Phallus. Let's talk about phalluses. The phallus is a pagan fertility symbol, which represents generation, virility, and aggression. Again, very sexual, very aggressive. The phallus is held in both hands of one of the priest's assistants, and that's a hard word. Sometimes words are just difficult to say. You shake the dick. You shake the dildo twice towards each part of the compass for the benediction of the house. And yeah, if you want to use a penis in your ritual, that's cool. That's fine or whatever. But again, very one-sided. You kind of, I guess the woman as the altar is providing the feminine aspect. I don't really like that. I think I don't know. So in typical magical systems, the sword and the wand represent the phallic aspect. You can even, they're phallus shaped, and they're very penetrating and directive. The sword represents, it cuts away, it's penetrating, and the wand usually represents the will or the direction of energy. Whereas the chalice or the cup and the pentacle represents the feminine aspects of intuition, emotion, and the earth, stability, creative forces, and nurturing. So you have a lot of balance in other magical systems, which I think is a lot healthier. And remember, though, we're always talking in terms of symbolism. It's not necessarily the fact that whenever we talk about things having a certain gender, we have to remember that it's symbolic. There are, and it's very culturally dependent and constantly shifting. Like, for example, usually the sun is associated with masculine and the moon is associated with feminine. But this is something I haven't looked into in a while, but I think in some Japanese traditions, it's the opposite, where the masculine is associated with the moon and the sun is associated with the feminine. So these things are just symbols that we use to help tell a story. They're not fixed. So we always have to keep that in mind so that we don't get carried away and enforce unfair roles upon people. A gong is used. A gong is used to call upon the forces of darkness. It's to be struck once after the participants have repeated the priest's words, "Hail Satan." So you say "Hail Satan." Everyone says "Hail Satan." You strike the gong to call upon the forces of darkness. And then finally, a parchment is used, parchment paper. In keeping with the satanic views on sacrifice, the parchment used would be made from the skin of a sheep, but only when it's used or has been killed for food. An animal is never slaughtered for the purpose of using all or a part of the animal in a satanic ritual. I mean, so that's nice. They don't want to, they're obviously saying don't kill animals in a ritual. I mean, that should go without saying, but they want to use ideally parchment that's been from the skin of an animal. I'm vegan, so I'm not a proponent of this. But then the parchment is by means of which the message or request can be consumed by the candle flame and set out onto the ether. So either a request or a curse is written and burned in either the black or the white candle. Before the ritual begins, curses are placed to the right of the priest and charms or blessing are placed to the left. So once again, remember, right is that mockery. Right is the white candle and the mockery of right-hand path, and left is the black candle and the embrace of the left-hand path. So left, black candle is associated with blessings and charms, and right is associated with curses with the white candle. So when it comes to, so as you can see, we've taken a look here at these systems of LaVeyan Satanism and in terms of magic, and they're probably different than you thought that they would be. I think a lot of people have a lot of preconceived notions of what satanic rituals are like. So it's interesting, and like I said, Satanism in general, I think, is a good alternative to mainstream Christianity. But just personally, I'm not a fan of satanic magic. I think it's extremely one-sided, very imbalanced, ultimately suffers because of it. And magic affects the psyche to a great deal, to a very high degree. And if you are just constantly reinforcing all these symbols of darkness over and over, that can be harmful to the psyche. So I'm much more about systems of balance and systems of high magic, which is about self-actualization and transformation and reaching higher levels of consciousness and becoming divine, rather than being focused on indulgence of fleshly desires. There's a time and a place for that, absolutely. But if you just make your whole life and everything about that, to me, that's not very powerful. To me, that's a form of weakness. So I'm not a super huge fan. But that being said, if you guys want to see some videos on systems of magic that I do like and that I do resonate with, Let me know. Tell me in the comments, because we can absolutely explore that. We can explore all kinds of magic. We can explore ceremonial magic, magic of the Golden Dawn, of Thelema, chaos magic, a lot of different things. So tell me, let me know your thoughts in the comments, what you would like to see, more breakdowns of symbolism, etc. I have a whole playlist on Satanism. Check it out. And check out Satanism versus Luciferianism as well if you want to know the difference. I much more resonate with Luciferianism rather than Satanism. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed these videos, my friend. Check them all out. And if you enjoy my work, consider becoming a member on YouTube. Get access to our members only videos. Check out my book, Neogenesis, Dawn of the New Mind. That is located in the description of this video, along with a link to my Spotify channel. Give me a follow on there. Thank you all so much. I want to give a big shout out to everyone who supports, especially Renaissance Fairy, Cassidy, Angela, DB, Nusalina, Christopher, Eon, Vanessa, and Dallas. Thank you very much.